What I can tell you is that I just can't fathom what has happened.
Some people just need killing.
So, as many of you know, I've recently moved to Australia, so I thought, you know what? Since I'm in Australia, why don't I talk about a story I covered a year ago that was also about Australia? So, a while ago, I talked about this woman who basically hosted a family dinner. It was like a beef Wellington, and she used mushrooms, only to find out that the mushrooms were death cap mushrooms. So, pretty much everyone that ate the food, apart from one person, died. Now, I talked about it at the time, and I think, how could you have the worst misinput of your life that you use one of the singular, most poisonous plants, fungi, in the entire world instead of a normal button mushroom? What I'm going to do right now, I'm going to put up a picture of a death cap mushroom and then a button mushroom. Do they look anything similar? This isn't one of those things where it's like, you know, the incredibly poisonous kills you instantly, does 10,000 HP of damage thing, looks like the normal harmless thing. No, it's nothing like that. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this story up again, even though I covered it ages ago, is because they've now finally came to a verdict. Because as we know, in every country, the justice system is comedically slow. She's now actually been charged with 3 counts of murder and 1 attempted murder of her ex-husband's family. So the main protagonist, or antagonist, I guess, of this story is Erin Patterson. And she was married to a guy called Simon Patterson. They got married in 2007. They had 2 children together. But unfortunately, like a lot of marriages, their love didn't last very long. They had multiple breaks, splits, but then kind of came to the conclusion, we really don't like each other and we can't live with each other. So 8 years later in 2015, they separated. They were still legally married, but not really. Now, even though that's a horrible thing for anyone to go through, they seem to make it work. They both still gave attention to their 2 children, and they maintained a somewhat healthy and amicable relationship. This was until winter of 2022, where there were issues that started arising, mostly about child support payment. And it was also alleged that Erin Patterson had actually attempted to murder her ex-husband, Simon, on 3 different occasions. Once in November 2021, once in May and September of 2022. But these charges apparently were dropped, most likely due to lack of evidence. Keep in mind, her feeding the death cap mushrooms and one-tapping a bunch of people, that has nothing to do with the attempted murders I just talked about. That's a completely different case. But then on the 29th of July, 2023, Erin invited 4 people over to a meal, and only one of them would actually walk away alive. So the guests in attendance here were Don and Gail Patterson, the parents of Simon and Erin's former in-laws, as well as Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson, and also her husband, Ian Wilkinson. Now, Simon, the ex-husband, he was invited, but I'm guessing his spider senses were tingling that day and he realized, no, you know what, there's actually been enough attempted murders on me. I'm not going to show up today. Now, the main course is beef Wellington. Now, even though beef Wellington seems to be like a British dish, I've never actually tried it. I'd like to. It looks yummers. But usually it's also lined with mushrooms, herbs, onions, pepper, you know, all the things that British people don't use in their food because we don't like seasoning. But again, most people just buy mushrooms from the store. But instead, Erin chose to use Amanita phalidis, more commonly known as death cap mushrooms. I also want to say the pronunciation for that. I probably absolutely messed it up. I don't care. Just add it to the counter. Now, she claimed that she didn't forage for these and make a mistake. She actually went to an Asian store and bought the mushrooms. I'll tell you what. Nah, I didn't fucking do it.
I tell you what, man. No, I didn't kill them. It was all those bloody Asians, man. Those bloody Asians. They come in here, they take our jobs, man, and then they give me mushrooms that kill people.
No, even though that was the cope, that it was an Asian store she bought it from, and they must have accidentally packaged deadly mushrooms. The police later found out in an investigation that there were naturally occurring death cap mushrooms growing close to the town. And residents had actually already posted images on an online plant database to basically warn people. And also, Erin, in her search history, was using that website to find mushrooms. Now, am I going to pad the video out by explaining what a death cap mushroom is? Yeah, probably. Now, it's got the name death in it. What do you think it does? I think that's all I need to say. But you know what we could do? Go around to Gym Bros on TikTok and Instagram and tell them that there's 50 grams of protein per serving in a single death cap mushroom. They'll still eat it anyway. Now, the death cap mushroom, surprisingly for its name, it's #1 in the leaderboard for the most fatalities due to poisoning, and that is globally. One of the scariest things about it, though, is there's not really any treatment you can do. It goes straight for your kidneys and your liver. Most people only really survive by, when they know that they've eaten it, they end up getting a liver transplant. And another scary scary thing about it is, once you ingest it, for the first 24 hours, you'll feel terrible. Like, you'll be vomiting, poopy on the wall, all that kind of thing. But what makes it so scary is after that 24-hour period, you feel fine. You think like, oh, maybe I just had like a stomach bug or something. But that's when it goes for your vital organs. And most people, when they've got like a stomach bug, they don't immediately think to go to the hospital. They usually stock up on a bunch of water and lie in bed scrolling on TikTok. So Erin feeds her guests the beef Wellington that has the death cap mushrooms inside of it. And then the next day, all 4 of the guests decided to go to hospital because they felt really, really ill. So on the 4th of August, 6 days later, Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson die in Austin Heath, which is a state referral center for toxicity cases. The next day, Don Patterson also dies despite being given an emergency liver transplant. And then on the 21st of September, 20 weeks after the lunch, the sole survivor, Ian Wilkinson, is discharged and sent home. Again, like I said at the start, he was the only person to have eaten the beef Wellington and survived. Now, you're probably wondering, did Erin survive? She didn't eat the beef Wellington. And that was like the first thing the police pointed out. Like, why did you not choose to eat this food that you prepared for everyone else? And on top of that as well, incredibly suspicious behavior that 3 out of 4 people that ate your food ended up dying. And also the fact that they were your estranged in-laws. So Victorian police basically found Erin and arrested her on the 2nd of November, 2023. That's the video, the original video that I covered, which is like 2 years ago now. Now, the case itself was held in Morwell, Victoria, which is a really rural area. One thing I've noticed as well since moving to Australia, as soon as you move out of any of the big cities, the countryside here, it just looks like Red Dead 2 or something. Now, this trial lasted 11 weeks, starting the 29th of April and only concluding on the 7th of July. So basically around about a week ago from when I recorded this video. Now, this could be the Australian equivalent of the P. Diddy trial because there are so many inconsistencies here that just don't add up, and they are just comedic. Again, this is a really sad story. 3 people died, but from a beef Wellington, that's already just so bizarre. Now, one of the biggest issues that the trial had is the relationship Simon had to Erin. Simon being the ex-husband who, like I said earlier, didn't attend the meal. Again, his spider senses alerted him. Because they didn't get divorced, they just got separated. Now, this separation legally just isn't acknowledged or recognized at all. The thing is, Simon Peterson didn't actually have to present any evidence. That's because at the time, he was basically protected because legally they were married. Even the judge at one point basically had to be like, whoa, do you want to hit the big button in Among Us and call a meeting? You don't have to. You don't have to. I made certain assumptions, and I just want to confirm that those assumptions are correct. The spouse of an accused person has a right to object to giving evidence. I've assumed that from the history of this matter, you've been informed of the right previously and were willing to give evidence nonetheless. Now, are those assumptions correct? Also, where's me lighter? And Simon then basically said,
no.
Now, the reason why this is important is because Simon was basically the biggest way to get a conviction on Erin because, you know, he's the husband. He would have been able to talk about what she was like privately. And if he didn't want to testify, the prosecution would have basically had zero to work with, and it probably would have derailed the case, and she probably would have got off scot-free to cook a beef Wellington for the entire police force. He basically said, no, I don't understand what the rules are. Everyone was worried, and then he got the rules explained to him, and he just said, yeah, fuck it. Now, the biggest question that a lot of people had is Erin's health. Why was she healthy when everyone else either died or were severely hospitalized? Now, I do want to make a correction here. I said that she prepared a different meal and didn't eat any of the beef Wellington, but what was said in court is even better, and this is straight out of Breaking Bad. So, according to Erin, after all the guests left, she was still, you know, a little bit hungry. So she decided to eat an entire orange cake that Gail Patterson had brought over for lunch. This apparently caused her to be incredibly full, so she ended up going into the bathroom to purge herself, you know, releasing everything from her stomach. Now, I don't need to explain the Breaking Bad reference here. I'm probably just going to play it up here or something on like 2 times speed. This might have actually been a stolen plot point from Breaking Bad. She poisoned everyone just like Gus Fring did. And then basically to not to have any suspicion, she made herself throw up to not get ill. The same way that Gus, when he drank the tequila, also drank some because they didn't trust him, and then he went to go throw up to purge himself. Now, later in court, she did admit to suffering with bulimia, which, you know, don't need to explain that. People binge eat, they feel like they eat too much, they want to purge themselves afterwards. But another thing people brought up is your children, Erin. They don't have bulimia. They're not LARPing as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad. They ate some. Why aren't they ill? Now, Erin did give her kids the beef Wellington, but apparently she very cleverly removed the death cap mushrooms before giving them the leftovers, which again, not really a good look. I mean, you know, kids are picky eaters. I hated tomatoes and mushrooms as a kid, but at the same time, removing that one key ingredient of the beef Wellington, little bit suspicious. Now, even though it seems that the prosecution has her dead to rights, they still need a motive, a reason for wanting to do this. Because again, all the clues could line up. You could have been here at this time. You could have done this thing. But if there's not really a motive, it doesn't really make sense. And then it gives the defense more kind of wriggle room. She sells seashells on the seashore. Okay, I'm not having a stroke. Basically, she'd be able to try and use it to get off, or at least get some kind of lighter sentence, or even get the case thrown out. Now, obviously, there was the initial motive of her trying to get back at her ex or trying to get full custody over the children. But if you thought that was the case, you'd think if Simon didn't show up to the dinner, she would have called the entire thing off. Mission failed. We'll get him next time. I'm going to load a quick save. And also as well, you know, a spouse wanting to kill their partner to get, for example, life insurance money. Those payouts are insane. I do like life insurance, by the way, and health insurance. I think they are some of the biggest scams imaginable. I have seen time and time again with life insurance how people will, you know, just get killed or injured or incredibly ill on holiday. And then the agency that represents the insurance is like, he had a beer like 3 years before it happened. Yeah, it's the bit. Yeah, we can't pay. Now, despite the life insurance idea, Erin already was pretty well off, so that wasn't much of a motive either. And on top of all of this as well, Erin would just constantly lie throughout the entirety of the proceedings. She lied about buying the mushrooms at an Asian market, and then also lying about having found the mushrooms whilst foraging. She even faked having cancer, which was one of the main reasons why the family were all gathered together for the meal in the first place. And then she also lied about not owning a food dehydrator, which was used to prepare the mushrooms, despite the fact that she was caught on CCTV dumping a dehydrator at a local dump. Again, this story is really bizarre. We have been through the reeking with this one, but after 2 years in and out of court, Erin has been found guilty. That is 3 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. Now, under Victorian law, the sentence is life in prison, as it is in most places if they don't just shoot you. Now, the jury also concluded, in a very brave way, that she killed with intent. No way. Oh my God, I had no idea. And I mean, yeah, this was first-degree murder. This wasn't like, oh, I might fuck about, just use some fucking mushrooms. I'm not going to make sure they're safe or not. Like she purposely went to get dangerous, deadly mushrooms, knew the risk to herself, so decided to either, you know, not eat the mushrooms or prepare a different meal for herself. Again, I'm not sure if her claim about eating the orange cake and then like purging, doing a Gus Fring in the bathroom, I'm not sure if that actually happened or not, but she said it in court. Now, according to Australian law, apparently the chance for parole, if you've had a conviction, which she has 4 charges of, is a minimum of 30 years. So considering that Erin was born in 1974, the earliest she'd be able to ask for parole is 2055, where she would be 81 years old. And some of you might also think that waiting 30 years for parole for basically killing 3 people, well, trying to kill 4 and failing, that doesn't seem like a long time to wait. Well, that's because Australia, they don't have a stacking system, like for example in America. I mean, not having a stacking system seems a little bit weird. So you could, you know, she could have cooked beef Wellingtons for the entire town or the entire city or the entire region, and still she could be out on parole in 30 years. I mean, okay, I'm not a law expert in Australia, so I'm not really sure what the actual limit is there. But again, just seems a little bit silly. Now, Erin, thankfully, has one way out. She can appeal the decision, which means they basically have to do the court thing all over again. And you know, even if that goes through and an appeal is accepted, it's not looking good. So what's the moral of this story? Don't fucking eat mushrooms. They're very bad for you. Bad. Why do Australians talk like that? Bad. Fucking, I want to go fucking bottle-o, get me some JD, and then go bookies and do some bets. I'm going to go foraging for mushrooms.